Today we're delighted to be joined by LINVOY Primus, one of the most liked and humble footballers from his generation. LINVOY has spent the last 20 years playing football and finishing his career in the Premier League with Portsmouth Football Club, whilst playing against some of the best footballers in the world, including Wayne Rooney and Thierry. LINVOY, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm very well, Cyrus. I'm well, thank you.
Take us back, LINVOY. From the age of 18, you were playing high-profile football. What was going through your mind from that young age?
You get your first contract at 18 and you realise that you're quite special, because there's hundreds of boys that love to be in your position and don't actually make it. So you realise you're special, but you also realise there's a pressure that comes with that, because there's an expectancy. But it's not just about playing football with your friends. There's a demand for results, there's a demand for good performance, and psychologically it's hard as well, because you're going from a boy to a man, and you're growing up in a man's environment, so that's pretty tough. And you realise as well that somebody else wants to play in your position that's in your team, and you've got to try and keep them out of the team by playing well. The physical demands are different, because you're going from schoolboy training and obviously being in school to full-time training. So there's a physical demand on you. So there's lots and lots of things going on, and in that environment you can't show any weakness, because that will be deemed as something that's a flaw in your character. So a definite character building time, and you definitely had to dig deep on most days to do the right thing, and it never always went to the way you planned it to go.
Tell us a little bit about your personality from the age of 18. Were you an introvert? Were you an extrovert? Were you a confident teenager?
Yeah, so I'd definitely say I was an introvert. I showed the characteristics of that. There's probably somebody else wanting to come out and be a strong, dominant leader, but I never had the confidence to do that. I was confident when I was in good control. What I mean by that, a performance, the game you're playing, you might have played well, or you trained well, so that your confidence would rise there. But on the other side of that, if you didn't train well or didn't play well, my confidence would be quite low, and it's quite a bit of a roller coaster. And you're dealing with emotions as well that you're not used to, in terms of like I say, the demands from the manager, your teammates, the crowd, and stuff like that. So there's a lot of unknowns when you become a professional, and I think I struggled with that, because I wasn't used to that environment. I hadn't heard about that environment in terms of speaking to other pros about how to handle those situations. So it was a steep learning curve, and but it wasn't just me on my own. There was a number of other young players who were in the same position. But what you could tell was that nobody would ever talk about how low they were feeling or how insecure they were feeling. So you thought they had it all together. So you never share anything that was going on in your own personal life that would show any weakness.
Now, growing up, you were brought up going to church every Sunday. Your parents were Christians. Tell us a little bit about your Christian journey from a young age.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really understood why we were going to church. It was like we had to be there. Sunday morning, we'd go to our own churches, and I just went to a church that just seemed to me like it was a cold building. Guy up the front speaking, didn't really understand him. Then whipped off into Sunday school. You'd hear the stories of Jesus, Mary, Joseph, God, creation, and all that. And I suppose it just seemed like an overspill of school. But the biggest thing for me was not being able to get out there and play with my friends who were playing football. So it seemed unfair. So even though I was in that environment, I didn't really want to be there, because, like I say, it just seemed like an overspill of school. But it was a good thing. I look back now, and I know that what I was learning at that point, even though it didn't make much sense there, gave me a good foundation for eventually understanding the real relationship that I could have with God.
Tell us a little bit about the rebuilding of your relationship with God. At what age did that come into your life?
So I'd say from about 20 years old. So it was my first form of rejection that I faced in football, and I was released from the club I was playing for. And my hope, I suppose, my hope was that I would be a footballer forever. And when they told me they didn't want me, it's like my whole world came crashing down. And again, I can look back and say that at that point, and for the next 10 years, football was my God, and I served football with everything I had, but it didn't give me the happiness that I wanted or the peace that I wanted. So that journey really of building that relationship with God, I'd say, started when I was 20 to the age of about 28, when I'd finally had enough of life in the world of football. My wife wasn't well. I had on paper the perfect life, but I just was let down so many times by football, and in the end, a husband and wife invited my wife to church, and I thought, I better go along to make sure it's not a cult or anything, crazy.
Yeah.
And when we turned up at this church, I was blown away. The church that I knew from the age of, up until the age of 12, 13 years old, this was so different. It was a modern building. There was a band up the front. People were actually happy to be there, and there's lots of families. But the thing that really caught my attention was the guy that spoke. He I was expecting somebody to turn up. I was expecting a priest to turn up with his gowns on and a collar. And this guy came up in t-shirt and shorts, and I thought, wow, what's going on here? And then he started to speak about having everything and being empty. And I thought to myself, he's speaking about me. And then I thought, well, how does he know me? He doesn't even know that, I'm thinking this way or anything like that. And I was really drawn in by him. And then he said he had a relationship with God through Jesus. And I thought, what? How can that be? And I left that service just thinking, I've got to find out more. I've got to find out more. So for the next 6 weeks, I asked lots of questions. We went back to church. My teammate was a Christian, so I'd ask him questions. And in the end, because I was so fragile and vulnerable, and I didn't trust anybody, I used to think that when I asked my teammate the question about Christianity, he'd give me an answer. And then I thought, he's phoning up my church to tell them that I'm going to ask this question, so this is the answer you got to give. So I was really skeptical of the whole thing, but after 6 weeks I realized they had something that I wanted, and that was peace. I could see it in their eyes, I could see it in all over them, and that's what I wanted. And that's when the moment came when I asked the question, what is it that you guys have got? And they explained about Jesus and what he'd done for me on the cross and relationship with God, and I just thought, well, I want this. Whatever you've got, I want, and that's when it started.
Give us a little insight what it was growing up in the footballing world.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was a lot of money available, maybe the fast cars, big houses. What sort of lifestyle? Give us an idea to our viewers today.
As you journey through football, by 18, 19 years old, I could see that the top players in our team had lovely cars. I didn't know about their houses, but I suppose the world's effect on me, through reading magazines and papers and stuff like that, I could see that what looked like success was having a 4-bedroom house with a garage and a car outside, and having 2 children and a lovely marriage. So that looked like success. So as you become more successful in football, those things that you see get bigger. So not just 1 car, but 2 cars, not a 4-bedroom house, but a 6-bedroom house, and not just 1 holiday, but 3 holidays. So it just seemed that the more you could earn, the more things you could have. As exciting as it was to possibly have those things, it didn't really make it. I knew it didn't satisfy me. And in the end, just being comfortable, because my wife's health wasn't great. It's like what was more important was having, you know, a nice home, not the biggest home, not the flashiest car, but in that lifestyle, in that world, you know, the bigger the car you have, the faster the car, the newer the car, you know, whatever the newest thing out, to be able to have that and own that was the norm. And you see it time and time again. But, you know, if you live in that bubble of that seemed normal, but in reality, it wasn't normal at all.
Tell us a little bit about when your football career came towards an end, and you were used to receiving large pay packets, shall we say, large amounts of salary, and then all of a sudden you maybe stopped receiving the salary.
Yeah.
How financially, how were you able to cope during those times?
I suppose because I came to faith, you know, to love Jesus and know what he'd done to me at 28 years old. I made my Premier League debut at 29, 30 years old, and I didn't really earn. I earned good money, you know, don't get me wrong, I earned good money, but it wasn't extravagant. And then the second year of being in the Premier League, that's when I earned really good money. But by this time, my mindset, I've been taught through the Bible, through the church, and, you know, through revelation from God, that actually all that money you're earning is not going to last forever. So we really made a conscious effort to live on what we would have been getting from a championship wage and save the rest.
Wow.
So we had be able to build up funds to have a nest egg at the end. By the time retirement came, I'd been prepared for a couple of years that I was going to be retiring. So I knew mentally that, you know, the money wasn't going to be the same, but we had something set aside to help us through that. Now, it still wasn't easy. You know, it's still difficult to change, knowing that I didn't have another job to walk into. I didn't have enough money to not work again. And that adjustment and identity change and everything like that was huge. Not just for me, that's for my family as well. And but again, because of Jesus being my saviour and understanding that I was more than a footballer, it allowed me to recognise that my whole identity wasn't a footballer. LINVOY Primus played football, but he wasn't just a footballer. He was many more things than that.
Do you feel now that because of the amount of money that is involved in football, that some of these football players are maybe losing the passion to be playing football? It's more focused towards the financial side of things.
I'd say if you asked, I go into schools quite often to talk about my story and, you know, the journey, but the ups and downs and things like that. But if you ask a lot of young people, what do they want to do or be when they grow up? You know, most of the answers I hear is, I want to be rich and famous. And you say, okay, that's fine. What do you want to do to become rich and famous? And, you know, number one on the list is footballer or music or something like that. So I don't think footballers are on their own when they come into the game. They want to make money. But I just think, again, it's a reflection of society. And but again, we can't, and I've seen both sides of this, we could easily point the finger and say, you know, the footballers get paid a lot of money and they don't do the right thing, but it's who's educating those young men and helping them to make the right decisions and help them to advise them well enough. So I'd say it's definitely a case of, you know what, I can make money from football, but the reality of that is that the world shows that football is an easy way to make money. But if you saw meet some of the guys who their careers haven't gone the way they'd hoped, it's a very hard industry to stay in and be successful in.
Give us an insight, LINVOY, during your football career, when you were at the top, you were playing in front of thousands and thousands of fans. You're about to go on the pitch, you've got so much pressure, you've got the world watching you. How important was it to have your faith at that time with so much pressure that you were put under?
That period of time between the age of 20 and say 29, when I became a Christian, I played football with a lot of fear, fear of my own performance, what people were thinking, fear of the media. And the only way I could counter that fear was, to take on a personality that wasn't me. So I became very angry, aggressive, and I could mask the fear, but that could control me quite a bit. And I always say that I didn't play to my full potential in those years. But when I became a Christian, a year after I became a Christian, I was again told by another manager that I could leave the club. And that really hurt, because it brought all the emotions back from when I was 20 years old. What's going to happen next? Am I going to play for another club? Do we have to move? Is this my last wage? What if I don't stay in football? What am I going to do with my life now? And the club chaplain just said to me, Lynn, don't worry about it. God's got a plan for your life. And he said, look, if the manager doesn't want you here, then God will, has somewhere else for you to go. And I thought, well, he's hedging his bets a bit. He's saying, well, if you believe God can keep you here, that's fine. If he's going to take you somewhere else, that's fine. I thought, that doesn't make sense. And then he just gave me this verse that said, whatever you're doing, word or deed, do it for God. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he just said to me, Lynn, play for God. He said, play for an audience of one. He said, you've always played wanting to know what people think or try and impress everybody. So just play for God. He's giving you a gift, play for him. And even though I didn't quite understand it, I started to dedicate my training sessions to God. So before training, I'd pray and just say, Lord, I'm training for you. And then the manager said, Lynn, we don't want you to go. Your attitude's been great. We're going to keep you at the club now. And I just said, well, I'm playing for God, That's what I said to myself. Oh, this is all for God. This isn't for you. And then a couple of weeks later, I'm in the team. And I remember walking onto the pitch thinking, God, this is for you. And the pressure that fell off of me at that point, I played with peace. And people were saying to me, Lynn, you're a different person. You're just, what is it? And I say, well, I play for God now. And they was writing, oh, LINVOY calls the manager God. And I was like, no, I play for Jesus, It's Jesus. Jesus has given me this gift. God's given me this gift. Jesus has given me the opportunity to play for him. And that's what I'm going to do. So that really changed my outlook. And then when I started to understand who I was in Christ, I just went out there and I had no fear. I wasn't concerned about the results, still wanted to win, still wanted to play as tough and as physical as I was, but it was all for Jesus. And it just changed me. And that's when I always say that those years of being a Christian and playing for God were the best years of my football career.
Now, you mentioned there about your club chaplain. Tell us a little bit about the spiritual support that you received from your football club.
The dressing room environment is a difficult place, and I've seen, strong men crumble when they've done things wrong or been in that dressing room, and and the lads sort of turn against them, and it all used to be deemed as fun, but now it probably err on the side of bullying. But that was just the culture. And when I became a Christian, the player, my teammate, said, look, he has a Bible study with the chaplain once a week. Why don't I join him? So we used to meet up once a week, go through the Bible, but ask real life issues. If the manager wasn't playing me, how was I supposed to react? Now I'm a Christian, do I have to become a vicar? I know that's a silly question, but it's reality, because I know Christians as vicars.
Exactly.
And all sorts of things like that. And because of his support, and he was an ex-player, and he understood the culture of the dressing room. So when I told the lads that I was a Christian, they gave me a lot of stick, and to the point where it really hurt me. And again, the chaplain said, don't worry about it, Lynn. He said, you're being blessed. And I'm like, what? I'm blessed with what? He said, if you're persecuted in Jesus' name, you're being blessed. And again, I didn't quite understand it, but what that allowed me to do was be me, it didn't have to be a secret Christian, just be me, just play, train, work as hard as I can, and just live the life you can, the best way you can. And after a year or so, the lads started to, rather than, laughing at me about my Christianity, they then started to ask me to pray for them.
Wow.
And, and when I say, yeah, of course I will, they'd say, no, go off with the God Squad, pray with those guys, and then come back. So, but what ended up happening after that, we had 9 players at the club within 3 years who were Christians.
Wow.
We used to have prayer meetings before games. We used to run alpha courses at the football club, Christmas carols, all sorts of different things. So the culture changed, the support from the fans and understanding from the fans was amazing. And as a club, they just accepted that, okay, he might be a Christian, but he's delivering for us on the pitch. So there was a little bit of, right, if he does that, well, we will support him. But it was more than that. There's some amazing things happening at that time. And, it was a really special time at the club.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing now at the moment. You're involved in a couple of organisations, aren't you? The first one is Faith in Football. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Faith in Football was started by the chaplain, Mick Mellows, and Darren Moore and myself. And we just wanted to use football as a way of getting the local church to connect with the community. So it just started with starting little football leagues in an area in Portsmouth and allowing the church to run it. So we give the mechanics of how to run these little tournaments. We turn up, just get alongside the children and the parents who are involved. So that's grown we do educational projects now with reading and business. We do lots of things where single parents can bring their children along and just have time out and get to read, get to talk and stuff like that. So again, it's not the physical aspect of LINVOY, Darren and Mickey being on the ground. We can pull back because it's about the local church. It's not about us, and we've seen that grow, amazingly, and we're excited about the lives that the church have been able to get alongside and be able to help and support.
Amazing. You're also involved with Christians in Sport. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Christians in Sport, we've going for 30 years now, and all it is that my role within that is to support footballers mainly, but guys in athletics, because the reality is sport is dominating and you have to give it your all, and sometimes that crosses into the church life. So that might mean that some of these guys don't get to church, or if they do get to church, it's a hard thing, but the celebrity profile that some of these guys, have, they end up being worshipped. So they end up staying away from church because they just want to be normal guys who can go to church. So we'll support them with one-to-one Bible studies, bit of mentoring, very similar to what I had from the chaplain at the football club when I was there. So to be able to offer that to these guys has been really good. But as an organisation, like I say, we've been running for 30 years, offering to support any sports person who's a Christian in their sport to help them play for God and understand who they are, the world that they're in, that's their mission field, and to be able to equip them to be able to speak into that world is pretty cool. So so I've been with them now for 2 stints with them, but this is my second time round. It's just been under a year, but in total it's about 2.5 years, 3 years now.
You mentioned earlier, you ask a young person, I want to be successful, I want to be rich. What should they be thinking of from this young age?
I'd say always find what your passion point is. Whatever you're passionate about doing, get in there and do it to the best you can, because that's normally something that's within you and allows you to enjoy it. So even when you have difficult moments, you still be able to get up and go again. because life is difficult. And but if you can find something you're passionate about, I'd say pursue that. If your passion is to play football, you're not thinking about the money, then you will, you'll always play, and you'll play well, barring injuries and things like that. So I'd say find your passion and pursue it, and you can't go far wrong.
If there are any viewers today who are hearing about Jesus Christ for the very first time, Linvoy, what would you recommend to say, how can they build their relationship with Jesus?
Yeah, well, I always talk from a personal point of view, because I know that even though I knew, or I thought I knew who God was, it wasn't until I started to ask the questions, and those questions came about because I was in the right environment, and that environment was my local church. The guys in the church treated my family and myself as normal people. So from that, we was able to build a trust, and once I started to ask questions, and the answers I got back weren't the answers I was expecting. Sometimes I got quite upset and quite offended. But what I did know was that I was missing something. I didn't quite know what that something was until I explored, until I asked more, and I asked a few other people who were Christians and people I trusted. And in the end, the answer was just so obvious. But I would say, ask the questions. Don't think to yourself, you can put it off another day. Ask the questions, because you'll get the answers, and then you've got a choice to make. All I can say is that I didn't ask the questions at a young enough age. I knew some things, but I didn't ask the real questions. So ask those questions, and ask who Jesus really is, and I'm sure you'll be the answers you get will give you the knowledge and the hunger to pursue and find out more about him.
Beautiful. LINVOY Primus, I want to sincerely thank you so much for your time. You've been so inspirational to all our viewers. Thank you so much.
Cyrus, thank you. It's been great.